So this is teaching for women. So I want to talk about what's really important, and it's the gospel, because we have 46,000 different denominations of Christianity, but only one gospel, and they got all different gospels. Now in Isaiah 28, verse 12, it says, "This was the rest to cause the weary to rest. This was the time of refreshing, but they would not hear." Peter talks about the refreshing in Acts 3, which he's referring to the gospel. He says, starting in verse 18, "Be converted so your sins can be blotted out in the times of refreshing." The refreshing that they would not hear in Ephraim, the land of the pride, the drunkards of Ephraim. It's a fading flower. And then if you proceed to read in Acts 3, what does he talk about? The refreshing. He starts talking about Moses and the prophets, the gospel. And he says, and basically he quotes where to go look and find in Deuteronomy. He quotes Deuteronomy 18, which Yeshua, our Messiah, also points to multiple times in John 5, 46 and 47. "If you don't believe Moses' writings, how shall you believe my words?" he says. In Luke 16, the story of the rich man and Lazarus, Abraham saying, if they don't believe Moses and the prophets, they won't believe the one who rose from the dead. They won't believe Yeshua's words, just like Yeshua said in John 5. If they don't believe Moses' writings, they won't believe the words. They won't believe my words. And again, Peter in Acts 3, he doesn't just quote Deuteronomy 18, a key note. Whoever doesn't listen to that prophets that Jehovah will send, whoever doesn't listen, which basically is listen and obey, Jehovah's going to destroy from among the people. So what is this refreshing? Which is the gospel that Ephraim, the land of the pride, the drunkards, would not hear. Because it's really important, because there's 46,000 different Christian denominations with different gospels when there's one gospel. And Yeshua says, don't be deceived. For many false prophets, many antichrists will come after him to deceive many. So which Jesus is the right Jesus? Is it the Baptist Jesus? Is it the Catholic Jesus? Is it the Latter-day Saints Jesus? Which Jesus is the correct Jesus? Is it the Jehovah's Witness Jesus? There's 46,000 different Jesuses with 46,000 different gospels. So which one's correct? Because in the land of Ephraim, the fading flower, the drunkards, drunk on pride, this was the rest to cause the weary to rest. This was the refreshing that Peter says in Acts 3, therefore be converted so your sins can be blotted out in the times of refreshing, but they wouldn't hear. They didn't hear the gospel, the actual true gospel, spoken of and written of by Moses and the prophets and the scriptures in the Old Testament in Deuteronomy 18, 15 through 19, which says that Jehovah would rise up a capital P prophet from among some of thy brethren. The people were to hearken unto him. That means listen and obey. According to all that thou desireth of the Lord thy God in Horeb. in the day of the assembly. Now, what the heck happened at Horeb in the day of the assembly? Where can you find that? In Deuteronomy 5 and Deuteronomy 4. The rock of Horeb, right? Or Exodus 17. The covenants. That's what happens. The holy covenant, the 10 commandments, the covenants Jehovah spoke. Under the cloud, in the midst of the fire, they only heard a voice, they saw no similitude, Deuteronomy 4. And he declared unto him his covenants, even 10 commandments, and he added no more. Deuteronomy 5, he added no more in the day of the assembly. At the rock of Horeb. He just gave the 10, but Christians didn't hear this because they think that the Holy Covenant is the same as the sacrificial law. No, Deuteronomy 5, Jehovah spoke to them out of the midst of the fire. He wanted them to fear him. Oh, if they would fear me always and keep my commandments always. Oh, if they would have a heart in them to keep my commandments always. They did fear him. They were afraid of the fire, for it burned. Why should we die? They said. They didn't want to hear his voice anymore, that they die not, because they feared God. He accomplished what he wanted. He made the people fear him so they would keep his holy covenant always, if they would have a heart in them to keep my commandments always. So they asked Moses to be their mediator, to go hear what the Lord would say. They didn't want to hear his voice anymore. They thought they would die. Go hear what the Lord would say, and we will do it. And the people well spoken which they had spoken. Deuteronomy 18, Deuteronomy 5. So what did Moses do? He went up on Mount Sinai. Google that. The rock of Horeb and Mount Sinai are 6 miles apart. He went up on Mount Sinai to receive the covenants that Jehovah spoke with his voice to the people, that the people agreed to keep. And he was up there for 40 days and 40 nights, and Jehovah knew that the people were going to transgress. And the people grew in patience. You can read Exodus. You can go read Exodus chapter 32, I think. It's either 31 or 32 on this. The people grew impatient. They gathered around Aaron because they didn't know what happened to Moses. He was up there 40 days and 40 nights, a whole month, over a month. So they thought he died or something. They feared God, right? They thought they were going to die. They heard his voice anymore. And they gathered around Aaron and asked him to make a golden calf and said, "This is the God that brought us out of Egypt, out of bondage." Golden calf. Breaking the verbal covenant they just agreed to at Horeb. The 10 commandments, where Jehovah just gave the 10 and added no more. They made a graven image, said it was God, and sacrificed to it. So Jehovah told Moses to go down the mountain because the people transgressed. And Moses came down the mountain with the 2 tables of stone, with the 10 commandments, the covenants they agreed to at Horeb. He saw their transgression, threw the tables of stone on the ground, shattering them, signifying they broke the holy covenant. He destroyed the calf, grounded it up, and made them drink it. He pleaded for their life because Jehovah was going to destroy them all and start over. But Moses pleaded for their life. So Jehovah didn't destroy them all. He gave Moses the two new tables of stone with the holy covenants, what was desired at Horeb in the day of the assembly. And then he added a punishment. Exodus 20, a law they should not live by. The law of sin and death. The 600 and some laws. Deuteronomy 31, verse 24. That Moses wrote with his hand in a book, the handwriting of ordinances. That was a witness against the people until it would be finished. That law would eventually be finished. Paul tells you in Galatians 3:19, there's a law that was added because of transgression until the seed should come, which the promise was made. The sacrificial law. Deuteronomy 18, that prophecy, the testimony. Deuteronomy 18 is also not only the gospel, but it's the testimony Jehovah gave of his son in 1 John 5, verse 9 and 10. And if you don't believe Jehovah's testimony he gave of his son, the record he bare of his son, you make Jehovah a liar. But this was the rest to cause the weary to rest, but this was the refreshing, but they would not hear. So they can be converted, so their sins can be blotted out in the times of refreshing. Because that capital P prophet would give them everything desired at Horeb in the day of the assembly. Jehovah would rise him up and put his words in that prophet's mouth and give the people commands. And whoever doesn't listen to that prophet and what he commands, Jehovah would require of them, the people. Deuteronomy 18, the testimony. But the Christians say they don't have to keep any commands. They don't need to keep any commandments. They don't have to keep that holy covenant that was given with Jehovah's voice at the rock of Horeb. Don't put me under the holy covenant, they say. They say the holy covenant is the handwriting of ordinances, the sacrificial law, and that all was nailed to the stake. They didn't hear the times of refreshing because they don't know their commandments that Yeshua gave in Matthew 22 when he was asked, what is the greatest commandment in the law they had? What was written in the Old Testament? Love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, with all thy might. They don't know where to find it in the law, that it was already established, that Yeshua was quoting Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 5 and verse 25. If you do the holy covenant, the commandments that was given at Horeb in the day of the assembly, the holy covenant, if you do the 10 commandments, it will be your righteousness in the times of refreshing of the holy covenant. They don't know what it means to love their neighbor as themselves, which is like onto the first commandments that was written in the law in Leviticus 19, 15 through 18, to do only righteous judgment, the righteousness of God, Psalms 119, verse 172, and Deuteronomy chapter 6, the 10 commandments will be your righteousness, the righteousness of God, and all his commandments are righteousness. To do righteous judgment, judged by the righteousness of God, the 10 commandments. Don't hate your neighbor, but anyways rebuke them when they break the commandments of God, so they don't suffer sin upon them. Love thy neighbor as thyself. I am the Lord. They've turned them into feelings instead. They didn't hear the time of refreshing. They didn't hear the holy covenants that was delivered onto them, the first works, because they say it's the sacrificial law. The Holy Covenant is not the sacrificial law. or not Exodus 20, but you can find the commandments in Exodus 20 and Deuteronomy 18. But go read Ezekiel chapter 20. There is a law with a promise that came with it of long life. Deuteronomy chapter 6, Ephesians chapter 6, 1 through 4, to honor your father and your mother, which is Deuteronomy chapter 6, which is to keep the commandments and teach them to your children, bring them up in the Lord. And the promise is they'll have a long life. The covenant with promise. And then there is one they shouldn't live by. The law of sin and death that was added because they transgressed with the golden calf. Only there until it would be finished. Yeshua quoted Deuteronomy 31:24 when he was on the stake right before he bowed his head and gave up to the ghost. He said, "It is finished." He finished the sacrificial law, but he already confirmed the covenants with many for 1 week before he ceased the sacrifice. Daniel 9 verse 27. He performed the mercy and remembered the covenants he was prophesying, the testimony, the record Jehovah gave of his son. In Luke 1:72. But Ephraim won't hear the time of refreshing, so they can be converted. They turn grace into favor. Jude 1. The grace of God that has appeared to all men. And Titus 2 teaches you to deny ungodliness, sin, and worldly lusts. It teaches you to deny it, to turn away from it, to not do it. And transgression of the law, the holy covenant, is sin. 1 John 3. And the law hangs on Yeshua's 2 commandments in Matthew 22, as well as the prophets, what the prophets spoke. Deuteronomy 18, the end of the chapter, whatever he spoke in Jehovah's name, if it didn't come to pass, we should not fear him. He would be a false prophet. If Yeshua didn't come to fulfill Deuteronomy 18, 15 through 19, he wouldn't have been that prophet that would give them the holy covenants at Horeb in the day of the assembly. If he didn't perform the mercy and remember the covenant, Luke 1:72, he would have been a false prophet. And this was the rest, to cause the weary to rest. This was a time of refreshing, but they would not hear, because they're stiff-necked, sottish children that will not hear the law of the Lord.